Welcome to Talking Technique, No Trouble. This is Ari with episode 67. Today I want to talk to you about speed licks. What I call a speed lick is 3 notes per string. Could also be 4, could also be 2. But because the symmetric mechanics of the pattern in my left hand, you can do some pretty fast stuff with it. You can pluck those things. You can thump them. And you can tap them. When I tap, I like to pull up a groove gear fret wrap over my strings so that I keep the string ring at bay. What's important with these kind of licks, it's true for everything I guess, but especially true when it gets fast and furious, is that it's in time. If you break one of those out without them being in time, they draw a lot of attention as it is. So it's really important that they don't interrupt the groove, that they're strategically placed in the song in a situation where they fit, for example, as a highlight in a solo, or if you want to work out some parts with a partner, then that works really well. I use a lot of this stuff in my solo program and in my duo programs because there's a lot of space to stretch out. I recommend you practice these with a metronome. Hopefully everything I'm going to show you is going to give you lots of ideas for your own patterns. And I really like using the metronome not only to help me with timing, because as I said, practicing timing with these is really important, but also because metronome gives you ideas for moving where the accent is. And I have some of those examples written out for you just to give you a springboard for your own ideas. This episode comes with a PDF, Talking Technique 67. You can find it on No Treble, or if you're watching that on YouTube, please click below in the description. I want to start out by showing you a G major scale with a 3-note per string pattern. You can play scales in many different ways, and many different ways make sense for grooving. However, for these speed patterns, the whole idea is that I always get 3 notes per string. So I'm going to show you a G major scale and play it. I'll use a starting note. I'm going to play all the modes, if you will. So I'm going to go up the G major scale on the E string. But what I will do is always use a 3-note per string pattern and use these starting notes, but I'm only going to play G major. From a technique standpoint, it's really important that you try to minimize your movement. This was fairly slow tempo, but the goal is to do something like this. And in order to pull that off, you really want to do as little movement, especially with the pointer. Now, for some people I know, doing 1 finger per fret in the lower registers is really hard, and here I'm doing even 1 more finger. I'm doing stretch fingering, so I'm encompassing not 4 but 5 frets. So in order to pull that off, if you can't keep it stationary like this, and by the way you find your way to that, because I have really small hands, very short fingers, but I trained myself to not work against myself. So there's always tension you can let go. I can let go. But it's in the hand. When you start working against yourself, that's when it's so hard to get the spread. People often overgrip, crawl into the bass, work with the shoulders. You want to train yourself to anchor your bass between here and here. So you have these points, these 3 points, 1, 2, and 3, that give you stability with the bass. Experiment with this angle, with this angle. A lot of people kind of point towards themselves. If you notice, I point towards the tip of the bass. If all of that is too hard for you, make little micro shifts. That is not a problem at all. You can even do that at a blasting tempo. Right? So, but even though you're making micro shifts, keep your finger movement, hand movement to a minimum. There's no need to, go far away from the bass. You want to keep it as close together as needed, but you can make little shifts as you go. Or if it's easier for you, I'm going to show you several exercises. You can do them up here, just move them up an octave, or in the middle, you know, change the key as needed so that you can reach your strings. I'm going to show you the scale again, now this time tapped. I'm using a tempo 100 on my metronome, and I'm going to show you as triplets as well as sextuplets. So a click after every 3 or a click after every 6. So I'll play them slower at first and then double it up, and this is a really good way to practice these. Now on your PDF, I have written out these shapes as 12/8. You can, of course, also use this in a regular 4/4. You can use it in a shuffled or swung rhythm because there you're already dealing with a subdivision of 3. But there are also ways to divide them into 4, into 2. So there are many different ways to use these kind of licks, and this idea of just mechanically blasting through, you know, a pattern. When you examine those patterns inside the scale as you move them up more closely, you will see that there are sometimes symmetric things that happen, sometimes not so symmetric things. But for example, you have this guy here to start you out, right? And then you have this thing to finish you off. And by the way, if you're you know, playing that with a different technique rather than tapping, you always want to move your hand in the direction of where it's going. So this is a better fingering rather than this, you know. So this is definitely better fingering than this. And then, you know, you can just move your hand. This one, by the way, if you really have a hard time stretching, this one is a good one to start out with. And, you know, there's several places inside the scale, of course, where this repeats. So if down here is too hard, there it is again. By the way, so far I've only played all of these patterns ascending, but obviously you can do the opposite as well. So what I want to show you next is, you've practiced the scale and all that good stuff, getting used to these kinds of shapes. Now I want to show you what you can do with just utilizing 2 strings. All right, let's take a look at the PDF, and I want to show you what what I'm doing there in terms of rhythmic displacement, because that's pretty fun to do. So I'm starting out with one spot that has stretch fingerings. That's number 1, but I'm also giving you an example of how to deal with this in a different situation where you don't have stretch fingering, which is up here. Now it's one of the tougher ones. 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. All right, I'm going to put the metronome again on tempo 100, and I will move the accents over time. And get that under your fingers. Then I'm going to start with the top note. So I'm going to move where the click is. I'm going to play essentially the same mechanic, but I'm starting at a different spot. Now the beat is going to be on the right hand, on the B. Or sextuplets. Okay, and now we have had the click on the lowest, we have had the click on the highest. How about the click in the middle? That one is the hardest. So now the click is on the A. And if you want to double this up, it sounds like this. And now I'm going to show you the same idea with this 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4 variation. Now with the click on the highest note here, 1 and 2. the middle note. So this one, I'll start it on the C. Hope you've enjoyed this episode on speed licks. There's much more to say. If you like it, let me know in the comments, then I'll do more in that vein. Please come and visit us at respaceblock.com. We got a new course out, and we also do something around the new year. So if you're watching this around New Year 2020, we are doing another New Year's cohort. That means going through one of our big courses with support. So you have lots of assignments, sending in videos. You can find out all about that at respaceblock.com/cohort. But definitely visit and check out what we're up to over there. And all the best, and hope to see you next time.